One of the most common frustrations stutterers face is you practice your speech at home by yourself and you're completely fluent. But the second you leave your home or your phone rings or you need to talk to somebody at the store, all of those tendencies and that stutter habit, it comes roaring back. Now, as someone who used to stutter quite a lot, I've experienced this. I know what it's like to feel that juxtaposition, we could call it, between you're completely fluent when you're alone, but then you just can't seem to bridge that gap between practicing alone, you're fluent. Soon as you talk to somebody else, it just evades you and you feel like you can't bridge that gap. And so that is what I want to help you with in this video, is to try to connect your fluency in private and make it public, okay? Now, throughout this video, we're gonna have a few different chapters. We're gonna walk through a few different things, but at the top here, what I wanna start with is we're gonna talk about your amygdala. Now, if you don't know what your amygdala is, this is a part of the brain, and everyone says it's almond shaped, which why are we naming brain structures after almonds? I have no idea, but that is the typical definition, or at least the explanation of what the amygdala looks like. But anyway, your amygdala, it's an almond shaped structure. It's very small, it's in your brain, and this could be called the fear center or the anxiety center of your brain. Also, if you've ever heard the phrase fight or flight response, that is initiated by your amygdala. So it is a very important part of the human brain, and it is very relevant to this discussion of transferring the fluency we have in private and making that a public fluency as well. Now, I'm not going to get into the deep scientific jargon because that's not the point. We don't even need that right now. I just want to give you the essence of what your amygdala is and a couple characteristics about it. The first characteristic of your amygdala that you need to understand is, as I said, it's the fear center, it's the anxiety center of your brain. And the way that it works is it does not care about your reason or your logic. And that's important because what happens when we have anxiety in any way? If you've ever experienced speech anxiety, social anxiety, any kind of anxiety, have you ever tried to reason with yourself and say, like, look, you don't need to be anxious. It's completely fine. It usually doesn't work, right? Because you're anxious anyway. It's annoying as all hell. But that is what happens. That is your amygdala at work. But here's the key point. Your amygdala only cares about experience. It only cares about proof. And so what that means is if you have speech anxiety, then just trying to use logic and tell yourself or remind yourself that you shouldn't be anxious, that it's okay, just calm down, just chill out. It's not going to work because that is not the language that your amygdala speaks. Your amygdala is like your very skeptical friend. We all have at least one of those friends, right, that are just very skeptical about everything. They won't believe anything you say until you have a little bit of proof. And that's what your amygdala is like. It needs proof that it doesn't need to be anxious. It needs concrete proof that it doesn't need to be afraid. And this is where exposure therapy comes in. Now, exposure therapy and really all of these ideas that I'm sharing with you today are a core part of this new project that I am working on. This is my big project that I have started. It's been in the process over the past couple months already with doing all the research, but I am making a big program on confidence, helping you rise above anxiety, both speech anxiety, social anxiety, and just to start to understand your own psychology and understand other people's psychology and become the best person you can be, especially in social settings, right? So I wanted to touch on that to let you know it's coming along. It'll be out in a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. So exposure therapy. Now this has been around for a long time. This has been around and it has never gone out of style. This is the oldest trick in the book, and it just works. Without going into all of the history and details, let me just show you an outline or tell you an outline of what exposure therapy is. This is all it is. you expose yourself to things that scare you. That's it. With the goal then of retraining your amygdala. See, this is why we talked about the amygdala first. Again, that's the fear center, the anxiety center of your brain. In order to rewire that, what do we need? We need proof. We need real world evidence, because that is the language that the amygdala speaks. And we get that proof by engaging in exposure therapy. Again, you just simply expose yourself to situations that scare you a little bit. That's all it is. So a few bullet points for getting the most out of exposure therapy is the first thing you need to do is to find a situation that scares you, but that isn't too overwhelming. So let's say your comfort threshold is here. What you don't want to do is use exposure therapy in the sense that you shoot for the stars and do something that completely scares the living daylights out of you. No, we don't need to do that, and that can be not useful because often then you come crashing down because it was too much for your current skill level or comfort level or stress level, whatever it is. You don't want to go for the home run right off the bat. What you need to do is find those things that are just above your current comfort level, those things that scare you just a little bit, and you want to expose yourself to those situations. Now, this matters because going back to your amygdala, the anxiety and fear center of your brain, the only way you can rewire your amygdala is if those anxieties and those fears are activated. And so you're not going to activate your amygdala to rewire it if you're not putting yourself in situations where you feel the discomfort, where you feel that anxiety. So, and there's a phrase that is used quite a lot in this space, which is activate to generate. So if you want to generate the change you're going for with anxiety, you need to activate the anxiety itself so that you can redirect it. So that's the first thing. Find a situation that scares you a little bit. Nothing crazy, just it gets your blood flowing, turns on that anxiety just enough. Now, the second bullet point for exposure therapy is to stay in that anxiety-provoking situation. So to give you an example, if let's say you get invited to a party or an event and you mustered up the courage to walk out the door and you go, even though there's a lot of perhaps speech and social anxiety that is just there and you can feel it. What you really do not want to do is go to that party, walk in the door, 2 minutes in, you start to freak out a little bit, and then you leave. That's the last thing we want, because what that does is that reinforces the anxiety, because what you are telling your amygdala is that social places where people are around, those are dangerous. Those are a threat. And you are telling your amygdala that because, again, that's the language it speaks. It believes the proof. It believes your actions. So if you leave a party immediately or you leave early due to that anxiety, then that strengthens those anxious connections, those fear connections in your amygdala. So you need to stay in the situations where your anxiety is turned on and just hang out. If nothing else, just hang out. If it's at a party and you feel that anxiety, to the best of your ability, try to just let it be, let it exist. You don't have to go and say hi to everyone. Just stay in the situation. Don't leave the party. Don't use your avoidance. Don't let the avoidance instinct take over, because that also will just reinforce the anxieties and the fears. Now, the next thing you want to do is reward yourself. And this can be the smallest reward, or it can be whatever you want it to be. But usually, if you go out into anxiety-provoking situations, it's gonna be difficult. There's gonna be a lot of resistance within you. You're not gonna want to do it. And when you then overcome that and you go out and you succeed in some way, even if that success was just going to that party and just staying there and not leaving too soon. You were just hanging out, even if you didn't say much. You stayed the course and you just stayed there. Then when the night is over, when you end up going home, you want to reward yourself for what you just accomplished, because that is a real accomplishment, to rise above those anxieties and to not come running straight back home. All right, now there's one more point we need to talk about when it comes to the process itself of exposure therapy. And then we also have a couple more important ideas that we'll get into before we wrap up the video. But when it comes again to the process itself of exposure, what you need to do is show confidence even when you don't feel it. Or you could say show confidence even in its absence. So the way that this works is that when you engage in exposure therapy, again, you just put yourself in situations that scare you a little bit. That's all this is. Then you are not going to have a deep well of inner confidence just radiating out of you. That's very unlikely that that is going to be the case. Instead, you need to show external confidence. You need to have good body language. You need to put yourself out there and do your best and play the part. And eventually, that inner confidence, it'll catch up. It's always a little behind. It will catch up. It just takes some time to get there. But this is a myth of sorts that people tend to think that you can only have confidence if it starts on the inside and then works its way out. It's not true. The reverse is true. You need to start with confidence on the outside. Good body language, smile, perhaps dress better, perhaps pay more attention to the way you look, to your haircut, to your cleanliness, or to how you smell, whatever it is. You're paying attention to how you present yourself because it helps you to show more external confidence. And as you begin to do that, again, the inner confidence is going to catch up. But this is a critical part of exposure. You need to show that confidence even when you don't feel it. You're not going to be perfect with this because when there is that disconnect, it can feel a bit unnatural at times, but you can do it. You can walk into a room with your shoulders back and your chest high. You don't have to go in all looking insecure. It's okay if you feel insecure. That doesn't mean that you need to look like that. And you need to show confidence because that is what your amygdala, your fear center, your anxiety center, that's what it's looking at. It's looking at your body language. You could think of it this way, that it's just observing you. Again, your amygdala cares about proof. It cares about how you actually act and how you actually respond to things. And so when you go out with good body language and you expose yourself to things that scare you, and you show that external confidence, your amygdala is like, oh, okay, interesting. So I don't need to be as anxious anymore. I don't need to be as afraid. All right, cool. I'll chill out. Or at least I'll notch it down a little bit. I still don't believe you fully yet, but this will take some time still. But okay, cool. Right? And then you keep doing that. Eventually, your anxiety chills out. It chills out. It chills out because you just keep proving to your amygdala that it doesn't need to be anxious. That is the power of exposure therapy. There's no better method. There's no better technique. This has been around for ages. It's going to be around for ages more. And it just works, plain and simple. All right, now we got a couple more important points to get to in this video. But before we do that, I want to let you know about my free Stop Stuttering workshop. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a structure and a system in place for overcoming stuttering, for building this confidence we're talking about, this fluency we're talking about, you need a plan. And you can get a plan right now for free. It's my Stop Stuttering workshop. This is a 45+ minute video training that you can watch 100% for free. It comes with downloads. It comes with a daily routine. It comes with a system. You get to understand the process of what stuttering is, how it works, what the process is of overcoming it, and it's all there. So don't miss out. Go watch the Stop Stuttering workshop. Again, it's 100% free. Link will be in the description below, and I'll see you over there. Okay, so to bring this home, there are two more things we need to discuss here. The one is What should I pay attention to when I am out? When I'm out engaging in exposure therapy, I'm out and I can feel that anxiety a little bit. I can feel that fear, and I'm in a social situation or I'm speaking to somebody on the phone. What should I pay attention to? Because it feels really hard to pay attention to anything. You feel overcome by that anxiety, right? Well, here's what you need to do. Think of one thing, just one thing. And often, this one thing is going to be what I call a tool, just something that you have on hand that you can use to make your life easier. And I'll give you an example. So if I am hungry, let's say it's a Sunday afternoon, and I just really want some pad thai. So what I might do is I'll call the local Thai restaurant on the phone and I'll put in an order for pad thai. Now, if I am feeling particularly anxious about this phone call, one of the things I could do is take a tool. Let's just take over articulation. It's probably my favorite tool that I still use to this day. And it's basically where when you start to feel stuck or you start to feel like you're speaking too choppily and it's just not flowing the way you want, elevate your voice by over enunciating a little bit, especially on certain words. Maybe not the whole time, but just get into this flow of like, instead of it's being stuck, elevate the voice, bring it up into your face in terms of like where the sensation and the sound of the voice is. That is what articulation helps you do. And so to go back to this example, if I'm on the phone, I want to order pad thai, then I call them and they'll be like, hello. And I'll be like, yes, hi, could I please have one order for takeout? I just want 2 orders of pad thai. Do you notice what I did there? I over articulated. So I really allowed for a more released sound. Now that's just one tool. That may or may not have as profound an effect as it had on me. Different tools affect different people. Everyone develops their favorite ones. But it's a really, really high quality tool. As I always said, there are high quality tools and low quality tools. That's a high quality tool. And again, I talk about tools and all this good stuff in my workshop. So if you want to dive deeper into that, go watch that, link in the description. But did you notice what I did there? I wasn't thinking about 5 different techniques at the same time. That's impossible, especially when you add on the fact that there's that heightened sense of anxiety. There's not much room left for anything else. And so you can only think of one thing at a time. And in this case, it was the over articulation. You could also use other tools like word stretching, where you stretch out a few of the words, particularly the feared words. This could be a tool like perhaps softening the consonants a little bit, where you speak with a little bit more of this soft quality. Again, doesn't have to be the whole call, but just to kind of maybe get you started, to get you off the ground, and then maybe after that you're good. It'll just depend on your stuttering type and what works best for you. But again, one thing, you're not going to be able to do more than that. Now, however, it can be difficult to implement even the one thing, right? Because you, as I already said, that anxiety, it's taking up so much of that space in your mind and in your experience. And so this is why private practice is so important. This is why you need to keep practicing and keep practicing a lot by yourself in your room with nobody else hearing you. Even though it seems like you're fluent all the time when you do that, you still need to do it because you need to practice these tools. You need to be able to get really, really skilled in using them. That way you actually have access to the tools when you need them. Because if you only practice in public when that anxiety is turned on, then it's just going to be much more difficult to even access that one thing that you're thinking about to try to help you along. So you need to be practicing these things. Again, it's what I talk about in the workshop, but I've already talked about that. So now I want to touch on a little something here that you may have a question about, and that is this experience of thinking about something proactively, like a tool, like using over articulation as I did earlier. Because you may have experienced in your life where you'll have moments where perhaps when you just feel more relaxed and you're speaking and you're not thinking about stuttering and then you speak fluently, and then you might have this idea that, well, that's what I need to aim for. That's what I want. I don't want to think about tricks or techniques or tools. I just want to try to access that. And you're exactly right. That's exactly what you want to access over the long term. Eventually, you'll get there. But the thing about getting there to where that sort of flow is automatic or unconscious is it first needs to be conscious. You are not going to get to that flow state on a grand scale in your life if you don't make these things conscious, if you don't make the little changes you're making conscious. And so this is why we have to bring that one thing to mind, whatever it is. And yes, there can be a certain disadvantage to doing that. There are always trade-offs with these things, but it's the only way to get to that unconscious fluency is to first run it through your conscious experience. And this is very much related to a Carl Jung quote that goes, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So there is this reality that you can't just rely on unconscious fluency and hoping you can somehow find it. You need to work step by step through your conscious everyday experience and work on these things one by one through all the ups and downs. And then as you become so skillful with those conscious things, eventually it starts to become automatic. Eventually it starts to fade into this unconscious space where you can just go about your day. You can speak however the hell you want. And then if you get tripped up during the day, you can quickly reset, you can access a tool, and you're right back and you're good to go. That's my experience now. I'm not perfect. I'm not completely cured. And that's okay. And I'm not expecting that of you either. But that's not the point, because at the end of the day, we don't really care about a cure. We just care about not having to deal with the goddamn pain of stuttering so much, or of perhaps not being able to say our name or order what we want at restaurants, right? Or speaking in class or going up and approaching that girl. It's like when you want to do something, but you can't do it from a place of speech anxiety, it inhibits you from doing the things you want. That's painful. And the good news is you don't need to be completely cured to have those things no longer cause you pain. You can go and you can be the best version of yourself, even if you still have a bit of an underlying tendency. And I'll talk about this in a couple weeks. I do have a video planned to dive into that topic of like whether it's an inborn tendency or if it's just a habit that you build up after you're born. And we'll dive into those details in another video. Okay, let's bring this home. The last thing I want to discuss with you is this idea of mastery being the perfect cure or being the forgotten cure. So if you think of fluency as a threshold where you want to reach this threshold where it no longer causes you that pain, right? So you want to, perhaps you feel like if this is the threshold and you are below it, and this is the area of disfluency, you just want to get to here to where you feel like you are fluent now. Well, one of the things you're doing with both your private practice by yourself and also using exposure therapy and putting yourself out there, as we've been discussing, is you are beginning to come up against that threshold, at least experience more moments where you actually rise above the threshold and you feel like you are engaging with people in a fluent, smooth way. And what you really want to do is engage so deeply in your speech and the transformation that you desire. You want to engage with it so intensely that when you are practicing alone or when you are talking with people whom you are very comfortable with, you want your fluency to be so damn good that it's so far above the threshold that even when you're in your most stressful situations, yes, it's going to drop, but because you're so good speaking by yourself, you've put in the hours. You're so good at speaking in more relaxed environments. You just become a master of those different pockets of your life. When that is that high, sure, it might still be a bit more stressful when you go into the more anxiety provoking situations or speaking with people in authority. But because you're starting from such a high point, it'll drop, but you're still above the threshold. You're still speaking fluently. And that's what mastery, that's the power of mastery, is when you focus on that as your cure instead of using instead of only relying on tricks or techniques or tools. Of course, I teach you all those things to help you along, but a better, broader mindset that you need to have when it comes to the overview of the way you are looking at yourself in your speech is you need to view it from a place of the pursuit of mastery. If you can just pursue mastery and become so damn good at speaking and start in the lowest stress levels of your life and expand that to include many other areas, eventually you'll get to this place again where you're so far above the threshold, even when you can still feel a bit of that tinge of anxiety kicking in, you're still above the threshold and you're still mostly fluent. Maybe not 100%. I'm not 100%. Who cares? Who cares? It doesn't hinder my life anymore. And that is what matters. I'm able to go live my life the way I want. And that's what I want for you. Okay? So, my friend, this video has been a pleasure to record. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something valuable out of it. And if you want to get even more value out of what I offer here at Speak Your Mind Method, I recommend you hop on over to the Stop Stuttering workshop. So it's a free 45+ minute video training that walks you through the entire process of what stuttering is, how to overcome it, what it looks like. You get a daily routine, you get a step-by-step system. It's all there, and the link is in the description below. Okay, so be sure to go check that out, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.